Hello, my name is Anthony Burchell. I am a member of OMI Group, and I'm so sorry I can't be there live, but I wanted to share with you all what we're working on in the group and give you an idea of how it's structured and how we work on interoperability and specifically around like glTF is what I'll be focused on. So this will be looking at sort of the standards that we're trying to establish through extensions on glTF so that you can embed logic and full experiences inside of it, inside of a file. So yeah, let's dive into it. As I mentioned, OMI Group is a W3C group. If you want to join, be sure to join here. Yeah, this is the best place to do all of that. Yeah, so let's just talk a little bit about OMI at a high level. So I won't go through all of these values, but just kind of at a high level, we are focused on trying to make the metaverse more accessible and human for not just big corporations, but for individuals, indies that are trying to build their own experiences. So we're not just made up of corporations. We have a lot of individuals that are content creators or indie devs with their own projects. And yeah, so we've got a diverse group of folks that are trying to make it happen. This space here that we're in right now, this is inside of, this is my interest in the metaverse. I have a WordPress plugin for WordPress sites that allows you to install the plugin and start building worlds. So I built this world, and the reason that I'm demoing in here, it's not about the plugin, but more about the fact that the assets, I'm going to go through the asset creation flow and show how the interoperability of an asset created in the third room, which is another platform I'll show off in just a moment. But third room has an editor or an exporter in Unity. And with that exporter, you can export those files with the OMI group extensions. So it'll have OMI extensions and allow that content to be moved from not just third room, but as I'm showing here, it'll be in this space. So yeah, like let's go ahead and get in here. So the first thing I want to show off is just a little bit of who we are. As I mentioned, we're not just made up of corporations or businesses. They're folks that are individually contributing, and everyone sort of has their superpower in the group. And yeah, so we have engineers, we have volunteers that are kind of focused on product management and mentoring, and folks that have just had a lot of history in the metaverse and bring a lot of important perspective. A lot of open source maintainers, so you're going to see a lot of open source code in this group. And yeah, and artists as well. It's really important. Content creators, I think, are just as important as the people trying to sort of write tools for standardization. Can't really be a standard unless people are actually making content with it. So yeah. And yeah, this was sort of an exercise that we went through for one of our meetings. And speaking of our meetings, we just finished celebrating our 100th consecutive weekly meeting for OMI. And yeah, so every Wednesday the group meets. And we have a calendar on the website, omi.org. But yeah, we were just celebrating a 100 almost at 100 years, but 100 weeks of consecutive meetings. And there was a little bit of a party that was thrown to commemorate the occasion in Hyperfy. So we made a little space in here, and everyone kind of gathered during the meeting and took selfies and wore their favorite avatars, and it was a good time. And yeah, so every Wednesday we're talking about the updates through all the groups and kind of coordinating and just keeping tabs on what's going on. So yeah, let's go talk about the glTF extensions. I've got here the process of how an extension becomes official, but this is kind of boring. So let's get into some fun stuff first, and then go from there. Yeah, let's start with glTF extensions. This room here I made just as an illustration of the extensions that we have currently in flight. So let's start with the collider. So the OMI collider is a way for us to define what is collidable in a scene, and collidable could be collidable for many reasons. Like collidable could indicate something that's like clickable, or something that is collidable in that it would move you up. So it's sort of the demo here is that this object, as I walk on it, it moves me up. So on the content creation side, I mentioned earlier Third Room. Third Room is an awesome metaverse app that is being built by Robert Long and his team at Matrix. And yeah, this app is really cool. I'm gonna just kind of let this video play through, but it gives you a kind of good idea of what they've got going on. See if I can skip to the part where, yeah, demos. Demos. I can't skip. But yeah, there's some images you can see of the app. And yeah, there's tons of stuff that you can do in here. There's like, of course, multiplayer, but at the bottom you can see there's like asset generation. And Third Room's been very focused on doing it from a standards first approach, very similar to what I was mentioning earlier. Yeah, super cool physics. And yeah, so Third Room's a really cool app, and they have an exporter in Unity that allows you to export the extensions bundled inside of a file. So I've got the exporter here. I'm going to do a demo of this in a little bit later, but this is the actual world that I'm inside of right now giving this presentation, and you'll see there's like the audio and all these things in here. So more on that in just a minute. But yeah, so we've got the collider here, and using that exporter that Third Room has made, you can define the things like a collider. So in this, if you look here at the bottom, the box collider is a standard Unity component, but with the exporter that Third Room is open sourced, you can automatically, when you export your scene, have those converted to the OMI collider spec, which is this JSON here, so that you can predictably use colliders inside of your worlds and yeah, piece together your experiences using those colliders. So one experience that I've been working on that unfortunately I don't have a way to route my audio. It's just not working, but pretend you're hearing music and it's beautiful. But here we have an audio file. So this is a sort of a digital record. I'm putting together like a single inside of this this 3D file, but packaged inside of this 3D file is an actual MP3 file, and that MP3 file is played inside of the room as I walk around. I start hearing it get louder, quieter, and that is defined by the properties that are in the KHR audio extension. So this used to be the OMI audio extension, and it graduated up to official KHR audio. It's right now still in a pull request. There's still a couple pending pieces of feedback on, I think, like labeling, or I think maybe on something in the structure of it. But it's pretty well settled and predictable. I don't think any of the names are going to be changing. If anything, there's just going to be maybe properties added. The structure will very likely be the same as it is now. But this is sort of how we're thinking about extensions and how people will use them. Right now, we've got these like staged processes where you can propose an extension to be a stage 1 proposal, where we explore what it means for something to be standardized and platforms either adopt it or kind of wait and see what other platforms do before they adopt it and see what users and content creators are doing. But Third Room has been very much leading the charge. My plugin, we've been going with every extension we can add that makes sense. Like some of these extensions don't make sense for every platform, so you don't have to implement everything to be an interoperable platform. I think like chairs, like my this app that I'm in right now, I don't have a third person view, so a chair doesn't really make sense when you click on it to sit down. You've only got first person view anyway, so I will eventually implement those, but that's sort of how we're thinking about interoperability in where an extension doesn't have to be forced. It doesn't if it doesn't fit every platform, then it probably isn't a standard, and maybe it can live alone in a vendor extension. So if you're building something super specific that's catered to one specific thing, or one's your experience, you can create vendor extensions that are very similar to these, where you can like KHR audio could be your company underscore audio, and you can have your own like audio filters and maybe reverb and all kinds of cool effects, whatever you want to do. Or that can be added in the extras nodes property for your objects. There's a lot of ways to do it. And yeah, so this is the Unity exporter for the Third Room exporter. This is what the properties look like for positional audio. So there's a really cool little graphic that shows you the properties that you're setting, like the outer angle, the gain, and distance, and all of that. And that'll be respected so that you hear it as you walk towards it. It could be global audio, and also to respect things like looping, autoplay, things like that. For my implementation of the collider, where you click to play, I'm using a collider on it and generating an object to collide, and then on that collision, it clicks the play button and plays the audio. So in my case, I'm assuming that both the object has an OMI collider and also has an audio node, so that collider plus node equals interactable thing that you can click on and turn on. So yeah, that's one approach there for at least audio. And another extension that we're working on is, well, the OMI Link extension. And this one is also in Third Room and in the 3-object viewer plugin that we're in right now. And the OMI Link extension allows you to link Portal out to different spaces. And it has a few properties like the title, the URI, and you can also, using that same method that I was mentioning earlier with audio, having a collider to imply that it's clickable to make it trigger audio. This link can have the same thing, where you have a collider on a node alongside a link, and you can assume that a collision into that will take you into that space. But there's other ways you can do it. Like right now, I'm not extremely happy with my implementation. I really like other people's. Like Third Room has a really cool one where you click on it. It has sort of a confirmation. I believe it'll take you into the next space. But yeah, so we've got, if you look here on the Unity side, we've got the box collider and the link behavior components, and you would just add those components to your object and define the URI, the title, and that will be used for when you collide into something. So I have one right here. This one is taking me into the OMI Hyperfi world that we were celebrating our 100th in. So yeah, what we have here is, if you look, we've got the title and the URI. So the title for this one is the OMI Hyperfi world, and the URI is that URI. So if I walk into it, we'll go ahead and do this real quick. Boop. It will take me into Hyperfi and load up the world. And I guess we can walk through there real quick. I'll do a quick show off some of the folks in the group. So yeah, so that portals you in, and you're into your next experience. So this really is showing off the power of the metaverse, right? Like traversal already demoed through that. And yeah, so this is the Omi Group 100th that we celebrated. Oh, I really love this train. I didn't see the train, but yeah, this is these are some booths that M3 put on with Neon Biddle, where a lot of platform builders were able to put together booths and show off what they're working on. So here's one. This one's my booth for 3 Object Viewer, and it's demoing an extension that I'm working on for personality embedded inside of an AI. So this personality can define how the character responds to you, so that it uses that kind of flavor in its responses, and you can hook it up to different AI systems. And yeah, so that one's actually one that I've proposed in Omi. We're still working to get that to stage 1. There's some implementation details that we want to get right before we solidify it as a stage 1 proposal, and we'll go over that proposal process in just a moment when we jump back into to the space. But yeah, so here's some other folks who got Croquet as part of Omi, and they have a really cool product where you can like social WebXR platform. And then over here we've got the Omi Group booth. So this booth is our kind of traveling version of this presentation that I'm giving, that has very simple diagrams so people can understand how these extensions work. But yeah, let's go ahead and go back to the presentations. So that was the Omi link extension. So that could be embedded into a file, and we could have essentially a hyperlink, the exact same thing as what a hyperlink would do. It's essentially what we're going for here. And it can not just be these obvious portals that are boxes, but they could be even other things like buttons, or it could be a character that you bump into and they push you into another dimension. You can get really creative with these, and yeah. So again, with the behaviors, we have this collider that exists alongside the actual link extension, which is this JSON here, and yeah, this can kind of be more modular, where you could have maybe something that's not even a collider that represents it, just this data stored in like maybe bookmarks. Like you could have a space that has a bunch of bookmarks or something like that. But it's this is kind of one implementation for that. So the other one that we have here is the spawn point. Spawn point has yeah, a few properties. You can give it a title, a team, a group. And that data can represent the different, I guess, applications of a spawn point. So, when I initially was working on this one, I drafted an initial proposal where I think it only had the title. It was like, just let's put the spawn point on something and give it a title, and that's good enough to create an interoperable spawn point. And then it was mentioned by Aaron in Omi Group, who's like, well, maybe we need titles, I mean, teams and groups. So those are other properties that I hadn't even considered, where you could have like red team, blue team, and different spawn points for them. Like imagining like a first-person shooter game where you have capture the flag, where there's maybe 3 flags per team, and so then you would name the team red, and then each one of them could maybe be grouped in regions, and then each one of them have their own title. So that it got really deep, and I was like kind of surprised at how deep a spawn point can actually go. So yeah, this is the spawn point extension. We have this implemented in, I believe, Third Room, and also the 3 Object Viewer plugin. And yeah, this is all it really is. You get a title, a team, a group, and it'll export that out for you with the extension. So to demo it, if I hit the R key, I should end up at the door where I started off. So yep, here we are. That's my spawn point, and that totally works. So then boop again. And then also, like, if I fall off the edge and then I hit the R key, I'll respawn at that spawn point. So Yeah, it's a really cool extension for setting up like even maps. So I could see people selling maps in the future where they have all these spawn points defined for certain game types, and the ability to just put that file inside of a platform and it just work is the magic that we're aiming for in OMI. And yeah, let's see what else we got here. This is a seat. This one's really cool. Let's talk about the seat. So unfortunately, in my plugin here and through Object Viewer, I don't have sitting implemented because I don't have character controller implemented, but let's just use our imagination a little bit. The seat extension is really cool because you can have a really dynamic seat, like maybe or really dynamic character responses into a seat by just defining where the back is, where the foot should go, where the knee should go. So then, like, if you have a knee on this edge here and the back here, you can kind of figure out how your character should fit to it. And then you've got the back. So then these have points that are represented on the nodes. So this one actually has points defined for each of those, and you can kind of align your character's bones to the seat. It's just really interesting. I have not figured out the math. Maybe in the future I'm gonna get that down, but for right now I don't have it. And yeah, like the position data can be deduced in a lot of cases. Like for instance, the audio node, you'll notice that we don't have location data that's stored in here because you would use the data of the node in the scene. So in this case, the scene has this object or that circle in that point, and that point is at the position of -2, 0.8, -2. And the same goes for um, the the OMI link. Yeah, so that's one other thing. Now let's kind of talk about what how all of this comes to be, because you can't have just one person claiming that a standard is a standard. And that's where we get into the glTF working group process. So there are many working groups in OMI. The glTF one is the one that I just can speak to the best and kind of give a long presentation on. But the extension group, we have these stages that an extension can go through before we ratify it and make it a standard. And so it has 5 stages, and we're still working these out. Like some of these we've been learning from over the course of, well, I guess 2 years now OMI's been around. So we've been kind of refining this process for that time, and we've gotten to a good point where like some of these things are looser requirements, like in the earlier stages, it's not as hard in stone, but we as of right now, we've been using this as like our guideline where we have to check all of these boxes to move to the next stage, but it could be more dynamic in the future, I think. But you know, that's one of those things that will work out over time as we learn. So yeah, this has gotten a bit of tangent there. Let's look at the stage 1. We've got a draft proposal is submitted to the working group for feedback, and we meet every Thursday for the glTF group. And on this Thursday meeting, we just discuss the extensions that we've been working on over the past week. And a stage 1 proposal is sometimes brought up where we vote on it in Discord, where folks that have been in the previous 2 meetings have voting power to approve or push back on an extension. And that definitely happens, and it's healthy and it's good for standards, because you kind of need to go through iteration and feedback where everyone agrees in order to get to that point where something is usable in many contexts. And one of the things I really like about the glTF work extensions group is we have folks that are building game engines, and we have folks that are building platforms and apps and avatars, and there's a lot of perspective that helps define these standards. And yeah, I mean, even if you're not technical, going to these meetings is really cool to just be thinking about, oh, well, if they're standardizing, let's say wearables or something like that, like I can start using that in my work. Um, so yeah, this is the first stage. We do require a contributor license agreement for the anyone that worked on it, just because that's how we maintain our W3C status and get these things officially set up under the OMI vendor name. And yeah, so then after things are voted on for stage one, stage two has requirements for how many platforms have implemented it and how far along this extension is in its usage and how many tools are built around it so that you can actually create things and even stage two, like you don't really need all of the tools. We start working that into the later stages. And yeah, so stage two is kind of focused on, of course, stage one requirements, but it needs implementation of the extension for it to be stage two, so that we have a representation we can show off and get other people to base their work off of. So it also needs valid and publicly accessible sample assets. So if we were like for instance, the link has a sample asset where you can just use that portal, and if you dropped it somewhere, it would have that link inside of it. Of course, it would be hard coded to some URL, but it's a good sample asset so that platform creators can use it to mock their implementations of it up against. And then you have JSON schema. So this is when it starts becoming more more official, where we need official markdown of all of the properties and what the rules are around them. Like maybe if there's a property of the extension that's a string, maybe it has a limit of how many characters it can be. Things like that start to get solidified in this stage. So yeah, stage one is kind of everyone agreeing that yeah, this is a thing that could be standardized, should be standardized. And then we start getting implementations and build the JSON schema and kind of get it more official. And then we get into stage three, where two or more metaverse implementations. So this is where I think the best stage where things are happening is because you start getting multiple implementations and platforms, and they start communicating and adjusting the schema based on that communication. And yeah, the coordination is magic. It's why I'm in OMI. Yeah, so these are the other requirements. Validator, so that you can actually test the assets and make sure they work and are actually being embedded, so you have a way to know if you're doing it right. A content creation tool for generating the assets. The third room extension or the exporter is a good representation of a tool that would create these assets. And all implementation, sample assets, and content creation tools should consume or produce assets that pass validation. So it's just sort of saying like the whole loop of the content needs to work. Then we get into stage four, where the extension's been ratified, has multiple metaverse implementations, a validator, and it gets pretty deep at this point. It's pretty solid, and this is where we start to think about stage five, which is where we promote an extension or submit an extension to be considered to be an official Chronos extension on the glTF format. And we have one extension that is an example of that. We have KHR Audio, which is the one that started off as the OMI audio emitter. And it was inspired and worked in collaboration with the Microsoft audio emitter and some folks that were working on that standard or that extension. And yeah, so this one right now, it's been open for a while, but it is, I swear, very, very close to being officially accepted as KHR Audio. I think we got like one little piece of feedback that's holding us back, and it'll be done. But yeah, that's how an extension can go from an idea to an officially proposed standard. And yeah, so that's kind of how we're looking at standards and digital assets and bringing it all together through a working group. And yeah, it's been really fun. We have amazing members, and you can get involved at omegroup.org. And if you have any questions, you can DM me on Twitter. My handle is ANTPB, or you can find me in the OMI Group Discord, which if you go to omegroup.org, we have a Discord button and a link to our GitHub. We have a blog where you can kind of look at some of the stuff that we've been posting about. Our YouTube channel, and what was the thing that I was bringing you over? Oh, the calendar is a really big one. If you want to know any of the events that you can get involved in, there's the calendar. And yeah, the big one is the Discord button. You can click on that and join us and get involved. And before I go, I wanted to show a little bit about the asset creation. I apologize how zoomed out this is, but this will just kind of give you an idea of how you can create these assets using these extensions today. So I have the third room exporter currently added. I'll share a link in the video on how to do this, but the Unity exporter has all of the extensions you would need, or the components you would need to add these extensions to your file. So just to like give a kind of a workflow demo, here we are inside of the room. There's that audio file that I was talking about earlier. So yeah, this is the presentation space that I was just in. I have this object here that doesn't have a mesh collider on it currently, so I'm just going to go add a mesh collider. And when you export that object now, that mesh collider should be included in the data so that it knows in my app to use that as the collider to walk on. So we got here is the audio one that I was mentioning earlier. You can add many pieces of audio. You can add global audio and do things like that. And when you're ready to export something, you would just select the files that you want to export, or the objects. So in my case, the audio, I want to export this cartridge with all of the objects inside of it, all of the game objects inside of it. So I would highlight that, go to Assets, and then Unity glTF. So the third room exporter is built on top of Unity glTF, so it's got like the instructions will explain how to install this, but it adds these OMI extensions as part of the exporter for Unity glTF. So once you've got selected objects, you would click Export Selected as GLB, and this is the ones that I would export as the audio file. So it'll create the file, and I click Choose to go to my desktop. And there it is. It named it this. So I'll just name it main audio file. And then I have that file that has the MP3 file inside of it. And if I click on the audio emitter in here, you'll see that track 1 is an audio source. If I click on that audio object in Unity, I've got the ability to change the track, set the gain, make it autoplay or loop, and all of that is respected inside of the KHR audio extension that gets exported. So yeah, that file is 4 megs, which tracks with about the size that I expected this to be, so yeah, it works. So now once you got that exported out, in my case, I tell my users to split the audio out because you're going to add a specific interaction to it, and I need it to be a separate file, just in my case. But so that's what I really like about the third room exporter. You can select only what you want to export out and omit what you don't want to. So I've already exported my audio file. Now I want to export my world. So I select just the 3 objects for the remainder of the world, and then I'll go Asset, Export Selected as GLB, choose that, and I'll save that. So now it's a presentation world. This world is really big. It's like 40 megs. I do not recommend doing that. But yeah, so I'll go back to my room here. I'll edit my post. So this is my app 3 object viewer. And you'll see the world loads in here. This is exactly what we expect. There's the spawn point. So I'll replace the environment with the one that I just created. So I'll select it and upload that gigantic world, and that'll replace it, and then we get the new version of it. And that's how you would, oh, it's got to load. So that's how you would update it if you had like changes to your extensions. You could use Unity as your sort of your source file, and or not even just Unity as your source file, but you could even distribute prefabs to your users, and yeah, you can do some really interesting things there. And yeah, that's really all there is to it. I this is I'm gonna go ahead and close the Unity app because it's kind of crashing my machine. But yeah, thanks for listening. And again, if you want to get involved with OMI, we have the Discord is the best place, and the GitHub has all of our repos. You can take a look at the glTF extensions repo, and that's where a lot of like the 3JS examples we have of all of the extensions exist. And you can see also in these what where these have been implemented, so that you can tell what platforms have are interoperable with this. So there's like a C++ implementation of the audio. So there's other, not just 3JS platforms using this. So there's a lot of really cool applications that you can consider using these extensions for. And yeah, thanks for listening. If you have any questions, DM me on Discord, or not DM me, but you can even just mention me and talk to me in the channel, or mention me on Twitter @NPV. And yeah, thanks for listening.